Hello everyone and welcome back to You're Missing the Point. It's been a long couple weeks without you. A lot happened in sports. So I want to get going right into it. Let's get started. Alright, first I want to talk some Penguins. Obviously they defeated the Washington Capitals in 7 games. Man, what a series that was. Like, part of me is shocked, part of me is not shocked, because nothing surprises me about a Mike Sullivan coach team anymore. But I mean, Washington had the better team on paper. They had the momentum swinging their way after that Game 6 performance. But they did not have Mr. Elimination Game, Bryan Rust. So, luckily he stepped up big in another elimination game for the Pens. The other big thing is they just did not show up prepared, it seemed like. So, it's gonna be interesting offseason for them. They have a lot of free agents. They're gonna have some, their team's probably gonna look a lot different next year. This was maybe Alex Ovechkin's best chance at winning a Stanley Cup. So it's gonna be hard to say what the team's gonna look like going forward and what they're gonna do about the star players that they have. The Penguins are now in the Eastern Conference Final with Ottawa, though. Justin Schultz, Bryan Rust, and Patrick Hornqvist are all out with injuries right now. I still think they're going to take care of the Senators in 6 games. I wouldn't be surprised, especially while Schultz is out, to see them dress 7 defensemen. I just think even though Daly's coming back, Justin Schultz had the largest part on the team defensively after Chris Letang went out. So, I mean, now you have Chris Letang and Justin Schultz out. You are getting Trevor Daly back, but you still just don't have all your pieces there defensively. So I think it would be nice to welcome Mark Streit in as the 7th defenseman, get him some work out there. He's some fresh legs. You can give some of your other guys less minutes defensively. He's a guy that can eat up more minutes. Here's the other thing you have to look at too, is the power play hasn't been doing real well to start off this series, and they just seem to need some kind of spark. Well, before the Penguins traded for Mark Streit, he had 21 points, and 8 of his 21 points came on the power play. He might not have the speed as some of the other defensemen the Penguins have on the roster, but this is a guy that is still a very smart hockey player. I think he could do well with moving the puck and just making the right choices with the puck, so I really do think they need to give him a shot in the lineup. In other Penguins news, Paul Steigerwald will no longer be announcing the games on Root Sports. He is now moving into a front office position with the Penguins, so Steve Mears is coming back, and he worked with the Penguins before. He also worked for the New York Islanders. Most recently, he worked for the NHL Network. So congratulations to him on that job. Hopefully he does well with it. I think he will do a pretty good job with it. I mean, hey, as long as he has Bob Airey down there, what could possibly go wrong?
Too, with McKenna on the ice, and boy, dangerous shit stuff.
Well, moving on, I guess. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Steelers this week. Obviously, between the last show and now, the NFL draft happened, and overall I'm pretty pleased with it. Still don't know if they made the right moves in regards to the quarterback situation, but only time will tell. They recently did sign former Wisconsin quarterback Bart Houston, which, I mean, he's a pretty sizable kid, and, I mean, Bart Houston is just such a football player name. His parents named him after Bart Starr. He's a Wisconsin kid, and I mean, just what a name. They also took wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster out of USC. A lot of people were a little bit surprised by them taking a wide receiver in the 2nd round, me included. But this kid, I mean, he could pan out to be a pretty good wide receiver. And here's the other thing you have to look at. You have almost double the amount of money tied up into your offense as you do your defense. You just signed Antonio Brown to a big contract. Martavis Bryant is coming back, but I have a feeling in the back of their minds the Steelers are a little bit worried about whether he can continue to stay on the field. And the other thing to look at that is now you have Antonio Brown signed to a big contract. You still have Ben Roethlisberger's contract. You're trying to work out a long-term deal with Le'Veon Bell. So, I mean, if Martavis Bryant has an expiring contract, so, I mean, I just don't see them being able to sign him into a big contract. If he goes out and has a monster season, he's probably going to look for a big contract, and I don't know that the Steelers are going to be able to pay for it. So, I mean, this isn't just a move that you're thinking about Martavis Bryant's availability on the field. You're starting to think about how long some of these other receivers are going to remain on the team due to the fact that you have so much money tied up into a couple of the other guys on the offense to start off with. The Steelers also took James Conner, which, man, after that draft pick, I was so happy for him. I think I got maybe like 3 hours of sleep that night. I was just on an emotional high, but I have the Steelers jersey on order. I have a t-shirt on order from him from Pittsburgh Clothing Company, which, as I said, you guys got to get on that site and check out their shirts. Pirates, Penguins, Steelers, Pitt, Penn State. They have so much stuff on there. They even have some older teams like the Pittsburgh Maulers, the Pittsburgh Pipers, the Condors. Just get on their site, pghclothing.com, and check out their stuff. I'm actually wearing a shirt from them today. This is a nice shirt that I just recently picked up from them. I have some more in the mail on their way here. So definitely get on their site and check out their clothes. But yeah, I was really excited about the James Conner pick because here's the thing. James Conner and Le'Veon Bell are both pretty solid running backs. James Conner brings a lot of power. He's also a pretty good pass-catching running back. So this gives the Steelers the opportunity that they could possibly keep 2 running backs on the field at the same time. You could line up one of them in a slot position maybe. So this adds another dimension to their offense. James Conner was also a pass rusher a couple times on the defensive line. He was originally a defensive end recruit for the team. And Mike Tomlin even said, hey, maybe we could throw him out on some blitz packages there. So I do really like the pick. I really, really, really don't think he would have been available in the 4th round for them to take due to the fact that between their 3rd round compensatory pick, which they took him with, and their 4th round pick, 5 other running backs were taken. So I really don't think he would have been available for their pick in the next round. So I'm okay with the fact that they took him at the spot that they did. In regards to the Pirates, I really don't have much to say right now. I mean, they don't look great. They don't look great. Andrew McCutchen not off to a great start at all this season. John Jaso has been a regular in the lineup lately, so I mean, what's that tell you? Josh Bell's been maybe one of the most promising players on the team from what I've seen. This kid's pacing for, I think, somewhere around 30 home runs this year, so I mean, there's some bright spots, but not enough for this team to pull some wins together. It's just been a really bad luck season for them, too. He had the whole Jung Ho Kang situation now. You don't know when and if he'll be able to join the team. You have the situation with Starling Marte, which you're going to get him back halfway through the season, and even if you make the playoffs, you're not going to be able to use him in the playoffs, so you really only get him for half a season this year. Gregory Polanco looks like he's battling through some injuries right now. Francisco Cervelli, same thing, battling through some injuries. So this has just been a really unfortunate season for this team. And I'm going to talk some more about them in the social media segment because I do have some questions about them. So let's jump into that. All right, well, first question is from Mike. And Mike asks, is Kutch done being an elite player? If the Pirates aren't competing at the trade deadline, is it time to rebuild? And if so, what do you think the first steps in terms of trading players would be? Oh, where do I begin with this one? First off, I'll address the Andrew McCutchen part of the question. So is Kutch done being an elite player? I do think his best baseballs of the past, I still think he could be a little bit better than the player that he is right now. He just has to find it. That's just the real big thing right now. So, I mean, I do think his best baseballs in the past, and do I think they should have traded him before now? I honestly don't know if I have the right answers for that. If they're not competing at the deadline, no, I don't think it's time to rebuild. I think you got to stand pat. And I honestly think what they need to do is not to trade away what they have, but try to retain as much as they can, even though there's not a lot of great parts. Like, obviously, nobody's going to want the bad players on the team, and I don't think the Pirates should sacrifice the good players that they do have. Because let's look at a couple things. First off, they're starting to bring up a lot of the big prospects that they did have. So your pool that you have in the minor leagues, you don't have a lot that are ready right now. You have a lot of guys that are still a couple of years down the road, and the ones that you do have that should be ready or should be, getting ready to come up aren't really doing their best. I mean, look at Austin Meadows. He's batting somewhere in the 220s in AAA right now, not necessarily knocking down the door to come up into the majors. I mean, this is why I would have been okay with them making a deal for someone like Jose Quintana early in the season, because you really don't know what you're going to have with your prospects, and you can't just keep banking on them. Because this is the problem that I thought the Pirates had. Right before they made the 2013 wild card and advanced the divisional round, they made some free agency acquisitions, and they also made some trades that built a pretty solid team for them. And then they just kind of went along the lines of, well, we don't really need to add a lot of parts. We have a lot of guys that are coming up, so we're just going to rely on those guys. But not all of it's panning out for them right now. And that's why I said, whenever the pieces were at best, because Tyler Glass now, he's still showing flashes that he's probably going to be good, but you still don't know what you're going to get with him. But this caused me to look back and see the roster that this team had for the 2013 wild card against the Reds. So, I mean, they already had Pedro Alvarez on the team. They signed Clint Barmas, I believe, the year before they went to the wild card game. So he was playing shortstop. They had Starling Marte up. Andrew McCutchen was having a pretty good season that year. They also still had Neil Walker, who, I mean, he was a pretty good defensive second baseman for them, and part of the field that they struggled with defensively this year so far has been second base, so I think it would have been in their best interest to probably hang on to him before. I know the bat wasn't a huge bat in the lineup, but he was still a reliable hitter, and he was still a guy that was a reliable defensive player at second base. But I mean, lineup-wise, that was really all they had that were already on the team. Marlon Byrd was a guy that they acquired at the trade deadline. Justin Morneau, another guy they acquired at the trade deadline. Russell Martin, they signed in free agency. So, I mean, those were three guys they added to help with this run. And, I mean, you look at the pitching rotation for that year. A.J. Burnett was signed as a free agent the year before. Francisco Liriano was signed as a free agent that season. The other three in the rotation were Garrett Cole, Jeff Locke, and Charlie Morton. I believe Wandy Rodriguez also had some starts in there too. But, I mean, look at this. A majority of the guys that you brought in were decent talent that you were signing as free agents. I just think that the best move for them right now, even if they're not going to contend, is just try to keep as many of the good pieces as you can and try to just add a couple more in free agency. I'm not saying that you have to go out and spend Chicago Cubs money. You just have to go and make the right free agent acquisitions. Like I said, you don't have to go and just completely open up your wallet and spend it on everybody, but you do have to add those few pieces that just get you a step closer. You can't just keep saying, we'll add a little bit and then hope that these prospects pan out and everything, because it's not always going to work that way. You got to do something in free agency. So I don't think that it's time to blow up the team and do something crazy. And it's the other thing to look at is it's not like they have much to give up right now. Don't get rid of any big pieces. Nobody wants your spare parts. Just stand pat right now, regardless of what result you have in the season, and just do something in free agency next year. Like, come on already. Our next question comes from Nick, and Nick asks, do you believe Watson is too inconsistent? Why not try Felipe Rivero as the closer? Well, I agree. In terms of, the stuff that he brings and the speed that he brings, I do think that Felipe Rivero would be a more reliable closer. And I just liked Watson pitching in his old spot that he had. I hate to say it because I like the guy, but every time he goes out for a save, I just get nervous. I don't get as nervous whenever Felipe Rivero is pitching. I just think you got to keep Watson back in his old spot, and you got to make Rivero the closer. So I do think Rivero should be moved to the closer, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is moving forward. Our next question comes from Ryan, and Ryan asks, do you like the extra innings in baseball, or do you believe in a better format? Well, I do. Here's the thing. Regardless of whatever you're going to do, it's going to take up extra time. So just stick with the extra innings. But I do think that they should alter things like the amount of pinch hits a certain player could have or something like that. Like, give some guys extra pinch hits, or if you sub a guy out earlier in the game, you can pinch hit him later in the game. I do think that you should be able to have something like that, because look at it this way. I didn't mind extra innings in the World Series, and then you have Game 7, which I thought was a great game. I really loved watching that game, especially the Rajai Davis home run. That was just awesome. No offense to him, but I mean, Game 7 of the World Series came down to Michael Martinez at the plate. So I do think they need to do something about that. Our next question comes from Jared, and Jared asks, do you think injuries will catch up to the Pens? I want to say yeah, but I don't know. Look at it this way. Their fourth line is maybe their best or most consistent line that they have right now. And Carter Rowney and Scott Wilson are on the fourth line. These are two guys that weren't regulars in the lineup before. Now they are, and they're both playing pretty good and making that line pretty good. The other player that you look at is Chad Ruhwedel. Another guy that wasn't a regular in the lineup. He was hurt for a little bit, and then whenever the Penguins got a couple defensive injuries, this was a guy that was inserted into the lineup. And I would bet between the end of the Washington series and the beginning of this series, among all top 6 defensemen that they have, he's probably first or second in shot attempts. I haven't looked at the exact stats, but just from watching him play, not a lot of their defensemen are really shooting the puck a whole lot, but I mean, this guy's firing the puck at the net every chance that he gets, so I wouldn't be surprised if over the last few games he's leading the team in shots right now defensively. It's just crazy to think, because I really thought Letang, I mean, it still shows it to some extent that they do miss Chris Letang, but they've been able to play, I mean, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals without him, and at the beginning of the playoffs, I was questioning whether or not they would even be able to win one series without him. And now they're a few wins away from being in the Stanley Cup Finals. So our final question comes from Mark. And Mark asks, who will win the Memorial Cup? Well, for those of you who don't know what the Memorial Cup is, it is a Canadian Hockey League round-robin championship tournament between a host city and the 3 Canadian Hockey League champions. This year, the 4 teams that are in the Memorial Cup are the OHL champion Erie Otters. Yes, the Erie Otters won the OHL championship, so congratulations to them. Next team is the QMJHL champion St. John Sea Dogs. You also have the WHL champion Seattle Thunderbirds, and the host team, the Windsor Spitfires, who were eliminated in the first round of the OHL playoffs by the London Knights. So who do I think will win the Memorial Cup? Well, I don't know if I'm going to be right in the long run with this one, but I'm going to put my prediction right now with the host city, the Windsor Spitfires. Just looking at them, I mean, the first thing that you have to look at is the other 3 teams just won championships. So, I mean, their bodies are still fresh, but I would imagine Windsor has been practicing, and their legs are going to be a little bit fresher for this tournament. They also have some pretty deep talent from what I saw on their roster. They currently have 4 NHL prospects, one of which is one of the top goalie prospects in Michael DiPietro. They also have 6 players who are either drafted or signed by NHL teams. So, I mean, it looks like the talent's there for them. They got a little bit of rest. I would imagine they were still practicing and preparing for this tournament. So, right now, I'm going to say that the Windsor Spitfires are going to win the Memorial Cup, but I could be wrong. That about does it for this week's show. Hopefully I have some positive Pirates and Penguins news to share with you next week. Until then, see you later. Today's show is brought to you by Shaw's Bait Company. For more information, please visit their Facebook page.